Oh, shoot.
I promise they'll never be late again.
Oh, no. Was
Yeah.
that okay? I just clicked go live. I'm still learning this program.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I had never pre-scheduled the live through this, so I guess I didn't
Mm-mm.
realize I did see it did say it said go live. All right. So did we miss that whole introduction not get seen? I'm guessing.
Okay. Now it's on now.
It's
Now it's
on.
on.
Okay, nice.
There we go. So yeah, yeah, we did miss that
We
introduction.
did. Okay. I'll just kind of quick go back over it a little bit. Hey, what's up, guys? Thank you so much for joining. I thought we were live. Sherry, I saw you, talk about me being late. I thought we were on at 11
For the
o'clock
record,
exactly.
we were here on time.
We were. So, yeah, I didn't realize I had to click go live. I set it up a little different this week. So, yeah, so thank you everybody for being here. This is episode 5 of the Raw Intuition Health Show. We have an incredible guest. We have Professor Spira here with us. And Professor Spira has really taken Arnold Ehret's work and really brought it to the masses. He's made it very visible and approachable and understandable for people to really take and run with. And I'm sure you guys know the mucusless diet healing system. Professor Spira has put in the work of adding to some of this, as well as kind of updating some of the language to make it more understandable for the modern reader. So yeah, he's put in a lot of work. He's changed a lot of lives, and so that's why I'm really thankful for him, and I'm excited to have him on to discuss something that he is passionate about and very knowledgeable about, and that is the importance of using transition when getting into a new lifestyle or a new way of living, new diet, and doing it in a way that's going to help you set up yourself for long-term success. And so yeah, that's what we're gonna get into. Sorry we missed you for those first few minutes past the hour, but yeah, Professor Spira, thanks for being here and sharing your wisdom with us.
Yeah, Matt, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Okay, so yeah, guys, as you know, we start off each show with the topic discussion, and so we'll talk about the transition topic, and then once we get through that, we're going to do the Q&A session where you will have a chance, if you ask a question, to win. I'm going to give away an ebook copy of Five-Star Salad Revolution, and so make sure you hold your questions till the end. Of course, you could excuse me, participate in the chat before then, but when you have, when you have your questions, if you could put them in towards the end so it's easier to go back and find them, that would be perfect. All right, so yeah, let's jump into it. Talk about transitioning and the power of using transition to really set yourself up for success. So, Professor Spira, you want to start us off?
Yeah, definitely. So, as I always say, transition, transition, transition. For me, that is the foundation of all of this work. That's really what makes this possible long term. If you want to live a life disease free, overcome your inflammation and your bloating and your fatigue and all of those issues, then it's not just enough to know what foods you're supposed to eat, because we can all pretty much off the top of our head, like, okay, well, fruits are probably good, fruits and vegetables and that kind of thing. But to understand how far we've gotten away from nature over generations and generations starts to put into perspective the kind of work that we really need to do to totally transform our body slowly and systematically, so that we may have permanent changes to the point where the body cannot tolerate going back to foods that do not belong in the body. So when I talk about transition, I first say it's 100% natural. In nature, we observe transition all over the place, whether you live in a place that has seasons, which is all that is transitioning from the cold to the warm, back to the cold, back to the warm. And we have the cycle of the leaves coming up, on and off the trees. if you, the birth process, when you're born, you start off as an embryo, a zygote, and you can't there's no way for somebody, because everybody talks about, oh, it's just all about the mind and willpower, which it's impossible for a baby to use its mind or have its parents use their mind to will the baby to grow faster, to become an adult within a couple days or a couple weeks. That's impossible. It unfolds over time. It is what it is. That's natural law. So what you do when you learn the principles and the methodologies of transition, and we're talking about the transition diet within the context of the mucusless diet healing system, is you align yourself with nature. You align yourself to the best that you can from going from wherever you're at, no matter how natural your diet is, to a space getting closer and closer to the diet that humans are supposed to have, which is what's discussed in Newton's diet healing system, and a lot of other folks understand that the humans are fruit eaters, that fruit is the best food for humans. However, it's not always understood that if you want to be fruit, and not only fruit but mucus free and fruit, because there's a number of people that eat a lot of fruits or are raw foodists, but they eat a lot of mucus forming foods. There's a whole lot of, the nuts and the seeds and avocados. Not saying you can't have any of that. It's part of the transition. But when you're on that for years and years and decades, you're still gonna have some problems. And so for a long-term strategy, we not only want to be 100% raw, but we want to get to a point where we're also 100% mucus free. And that it can't be done overnight. There's no willpower on that. You have to transform your physiology, transform your body to be able to get to that and sustain that level.
Yeah, wow, great points. And I just had that revelation with the seasons, right? Like we don't go from, 90 degrees to, 30 below overnight, right? So it nature takes a transition each season. And yeah, that's a great point. Um, and that really that leads into mine is because, I think, even just with, the the mindset, but also just practicality wise, you look at any, something that's relatable, I think, for most people is sports, right? So, you look at any sports player out there, you know, they've been practicing their craft for, decades, right? They've really been honing in their different skill sets for each section of whatever they play. And I think when you look at it that way and you enter into a new way of life with the mindset of, you're going to obviously have to transition into this, it takes the pressure off. It takes that pressure off of being perfect. It takes the pressure off of, thinking you have to know all the answers right away. And so, um, I think it gives you the opportunity to have, um, a little more compassion for yourself, and it gives you that chance to learn through trial and error. Um, and I think the experience, that firsthand experience, is what really gives people the true knowing, the true wisdom of whatever you're trying to understand. Because you could read a book about driving a car. You could study as much as you want, or read a book on how to shoot a basketball, until you actually get in the car or before you shoot the basketball. You're not actually going to be comfortable doing that. Whether you've read every book out there is. So actually getting into it, trial and error, understanding that it takes that experience to really truly know for yourself how to do something successfully. Um,
And that
and
is not one size fits all.
Yes.
And as I also like, yeah, that athlete. We always use the terminology for folks that are into the mucusless diet. We say we are practitioners of the mucusless diet healing system. I practice
Yep.
the diet, as opposed to where using a term like I'm such and such ist or this or that. And some of us are all of those different things. But when it comes to the mucusless diet, we're practitioners of the mucusless diet. When as you brought up the sports analogy, did Michael Jordan, did he just get up one day and he was just this genius and he just could, and he didn't have to practice, he didn't have to do anything, he just had to go out there and play? Or no, did he practice hours and hours and hours every day for years and years and years, and is just notorious for how much he practiced and how much he focused and studied on his game? Musicians, the best musicians in the world, I always make the analogy with practicing music. We can use the same method book. This is our mucusless diet version. Uh, we can all use the same method book, but everybody's going to apply those principles and methodologies to their body a little bit differently, because our bodies aren't the same. I could teach you how to play the trombone, and I could use the same method books that I came up using, but you would do it different. You would play it different because your physiology is different, your lips are different, the length of your arm, all these different dynamics are going to be different. So the idea is not to rely on a food there's all these food list diets out there where everybody's like, well, what's the food list and the nose, and it's like, no, it's not like black and white. There's foods that you could eat for a while, foods that you want to get off of immediately, and then foods that you could eat for the rest of your life. And so it's more nuanced than what a lot of people make it out to be. And as I find that to be a pretty problematic element, because I work with a lot of people to this, and for years and to this day, I work with a lot of people that have been they tried to go raw, or they were raw for a number of years, and then they hit a plateau point or a ceiling where they couldn't go any further and started having some issues. And like, okay, well, what do I do now? I felt so good for this period of time. Now I don't feel as good as I was. I'm having some, we use the word elimination instead of sickness. So I'm having eliminations, and don't know what to do. And outside of our community and the mucusless diet healing system methodology, there's not a whole lot of great advice when it comes to, well, what do you do when you need to take that step back, when you need to just reset the body, slow down the elimination, get away from some of the mucus forming foods? What do you do? What can you eat? That's because one of the things that does kind of that bugs me a little bit with members of the raw food community is that there seems to be this like the all or nothing,
Yep.
and that all cooked food is equal.
Yeah.
Like all cooked food is it's just like there's raw and cooked.
Yep.
And it's like, there's I would rather see somebody, and I get flack for this, but I'd rather see somebody eat some baked zucchini or some stewed kale or collard greens than to have 6 avocados
Yeah.
as a meal. There's some people that used to do that. And or to have a meal that is all these different mixtures with all these different nuts and seeds, pates, and all that kind of stuff. And again, perfectly fine transitional purposes. I would advise to always combine those things with a salad to help it eliminate. But that's the difference. That's the putting these things into perspective, where you you understand there's higher levels that you can always be achieving, and so you don't get satisfied with just sort of that lower level. And if you run into a problem, that you can always take a step back without devastating your body. Eating some baked spaghetti squash or baked acorn squash, or cooked mucus free foods are not going to do the same kind of harm that all these Big Macs and or even a lot of the processed vegan foods and all this kind of stuff. It's a totally different world. And so I
Yeah.
definitely advocate folks using these tools because that's all they're just tools that we can use to try to heal, clean our bodies up and heal ourselves.
Yeah. And I think there's enough evidence out there today where, I look at, like you said, there's a lot of people out there presenting the all or nothing mentality. All cooked food is toxic. All these things. Um, we could look at all the different approaches that are out there, and I'm just looking at like whole food plant based style of approaches. You got McDougall, you got Esselstyn, you got oh gosh, Furman. There's all these different ways of
Right.
approaching a plant based lifestyle. And I mean, really, and there's like Doug Graham, 80-10-10. There's all these different ways to do it. In From what I've witnessed, I mean, everybody seems to be, none of these approaches are providing, none of these guys look like they're 30 years younger than they are. I think most people are going into this thinking that they're going to get into one of these approaches and it's going to be this magic bullet that keeps them looking like they're 30 years old when they're 70 or something. All of these approaches are giving people good results. I think it's really just about finding what feels best for you, and what approach feels, it gives you the best energy, gives you the best, just quality of life. And from my experience, and I think from Professor Spira's experience, it's for me, it's getting as close to raw as possible. I don't hold myself all the time to 100% raw because I mean, a lot of times it's just not practical, and just from looking at all of the evidence that I can see, there's a lot of great theories out there, but just from my observation, it's just like, health is much more than just the diet. There is, I think, an optimal diet, and I think as close to 100% raw, mucusless, that's the best way to go. But I do recognize that there's so many approaches that can give you a high level of health, and you don't necessarily have to, you know, stick with one. You can try them all, see which one feels the best. And that's part of the transition. That's part of the transition is that trial and error and seeing what works well for you. And going back to the sports analogy, it's like you brought up Michael Jordan. He didn't, like you said, he didn't just start off and the first day he was, winning championships. He would take time to practice his free throw. Then he would, take more. Once he got that down, I'm sure he'd practice his mid-range jump shot. He would practice his three-pointer. He would practice his layups. Defense, passing, all these different aspects. And that's kind of how I got into the raw lifestyle. Was actually even before that, I had like a pre-transition before I even understood what a whole food plant-based diet or a raw vegan diet was. I was looking for solutions for hair loss, and I came across, of course, all these high protein, high animal protein diets, but leafy greens was a big part of pretty much everyone that I came across, and so I started making these big leafy green, mostly spinach salads with chicken and cheese and ranch dressing, all this crap in it. But it was a starting point for me, right? And so that's what got me started to recondition my microbiome and my taste buds, and it got me just more in tune with the taste of vegetable matter. And so that I did that for several years before I even knew, what this lifestyle was. And so once I did learn about it, I was able to take my next step, and without even really, strategically doing this, I just started having fruit for breakfast. And, I did that for a while. And once I was comfortable with that, so that was kind of like practicing my free throw or something. And then I got to like lunch, and then I started having a salad for lunch. And once I was comfortable with that, started having a side salad with my regular dinner, right? And then once I got comfortable, the side salad just kept getting bigger, kind of crowded out the previous, foods that I was eating, and then eventually I switched to fruit for breakfast and lunch, and then a big massive salad for dinner. And that's what I found to work the best for me up till this point. And I
Mm.
still love eating that way. It satisfies me. It's delicious. I enjoy everything about it. And so that was my transition into finding something that worked really well for me. And I don't tell everybody they got to do it that way, because, as Professor Spira said, everybody's going to have their own unique experience with it. But there are some foundational, pieces and groundwork that you can learn from, you know, people that have been doing this for a long time, like Professor Spira, to see kind of the framework of what you can work within, and then, kind of tweak it to your own way of doing.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a great story and testimony there, because that you gave, which we don't hear enough of, in my opinion, in the raw space, where folks really telling their origin story, because the
Yeah.
origin, almost all the ones that are successful, sometimes the ones that'll talk the most about, that'll be the most hardcore 100%, you listen to their origin story and it's like, well, wait a minute, you transitioned. It's like you had a, and yeah, but I didn't, and then it'll be lots of times like that where they didn't even know that they were transitioning. It wasn't a conscious thing, or it was just their part of their journey. But that to me is like literally the most important part of the journey, because people ask me all the time, well, what are you eating? What do you eat now? And I'm like, and I made a long, like 3 hour, it was a huge, it was like 2 or 3 hour long video. What do I eat in a day? And I made some people mad, like, well, if you can't tell me in 10 minutes what you eat in a day, but it was like, you're missing the point. The point is, I took you through what my first 3 years look like, what, 5 years, 5 to 10, what years 10 to 15, what those different years and periods look like, because I didn't eat the same years 1 through 3 that
Right.
I ate years 10 through 15, so on and so forth. And so that is something that it's hard for people to conceive of, that, that everybody wants to get to the finish line and know what the finish line is and try to get there as soon as possible. Whereas when you can really think in terms of it's the old, tortoise and the hare. This is about slow and steady and dealing with the principles. Now, the one thing we should say, there is a difference in how somebody's going to approach this. If you have a chronic illness, you have some kind of ailment, and that's the reason that you got on this path, because you're
Yeah.
looking to try to heal yourself of something, and you got a bad diagnosis, or you're just like, you've tried everything else and you just, okay, let me check this out because none of this other stuff worked. Then then your approach is going to be a little different in terms of, the getting into fasting maybe sooner, getting into, and still not hardcore fasting, but that's the kind of stuff that's going to be a little different, versus if you're somebody that's young and pretty intelligent, because you're here and you're like, that makes sense to me, let me check that out, and you don't have a whole lot of ailments, then your transition is going to look different than someone that's in their 60s or 70s and has never eaten barely any vegetables or fruit in their life, and they come to a point where they got a bad diagnosis and now they're looking into, or they just don't feel good and they're tired all the time, or aging much faster than they know they should be, then that person's gonna, their transition is gonna look a little different. But that's what I really like about the Mucusless Diet Healing System book, is those principles can apply to everybody, no matter what condition you're in, no matter what age you're in, those transitional principles do apply.
Yeah, definitely. And the second thing I wrote down for, another reason why, and this might not be for everybody, because I know, people have different, um, you know, r- relationships and priorities with their social circle. But one possible benefit that some people that are concerned about, um, the social aspect of getting into such a strange lifestyle to so many people is that when you transition, you kind of reduce that shock factor to everybody
Mm,
around you,
yeah.
and not that I'm promoting like kind of lowering yourself to keep everybody else happy, but for people that are getting into this lifestyle and they're wanting to transition in a controlled fashion that's gonna hopefully provide the best results. Yeah, it's gonna give people a chance to kind of acclimate to your new standards and your new practices. So you're not gonna one day tomorrow show up to a holiday gathering and just have like a plate of mangoes or something like that, where everybody's going to just lose their minds because you're not eating the turkey and the all that sort of stuff. So I think from a social standpoint, that can be another benefit to transitioning versus overnight. And like Spira said, it's going to depend on your current health situation. Yeah, if you're in like um a serious condition where you need to jump overnight, then of course that's going to be up to each person. But for the average person that's just trying to get healthy, feel better, have more energy, have better skin, whatever it is, getting into it this way can allow you to introduce it not only to yourself but also to the people around you. And that's really what I did. Is I used to go out and party quite a bit, and we would always play beer pong. I'm sure many people out there know beer pong. I got into it. I started like learning about this kind of like health and stuff, and I started switching. First I switched to um like IPAs, so they had more higher alcohol content, so I could drink less and
Mm,
still get the same effect. And then I switched to like organic beer, and then I was doing that for a while. Then I switched to like kombucha, or no, then I switched to like cider, alcoholic
like
ciders.
hard cider.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hard cider. And then I switched to kombucha, and I was playing beer pong with kombucha and all that. And then I switched to like either getting juice like at a store or fresh pressing it myself and bringing it with and using that. And then I think I got to water, but I was just like kind of over it at that point. And so then I
Right,
just
right.
decided, hey, I just want to spend my time studying. I just really got into studying health, and so I just put my focus into other things, and I kind of stopped going to the parties. But that was one way of for me to transition in a way that didn't just completely cut off everybody in my life and all my current practices. And again, it's going to be different for everybody. But did you have anything like that where you kind of transitioned out of a situation?
Yeah, so I mean, I was a little more hardcore, which is what I'm kind of known for that. Where I when I started the diet, I was kind of like a combination of a young Malcolm X and Huey P. Newton if
Nice.
they were doing the mucus diet healing system. So I was just like, I just didn't care what anybody thought about me. I was just that guy. Like, just don't even if you don't want to hear about this, don't even talk to me, And so I just really kind of grabbed a hold of that mentality. I would show up at if I did go to a wedding or I stopped going to restaurants. If I showed up at a social event or a wedding or something, I would bring my own lemons. I'd be sitting there with lemon. I'd just be sitting there. Everybody's eating all this stuff and chicken and all that, and I'm sitting there just looking at their eyes, eating while I'm eating a lemon. Like, I hope you think I'm crazy. So I had that approach. So that was a little that was my thing.
Nice.
But over the years, one of the reasons I've tried to build the community, the mucus free community, is because I know not everybody's like me and can do that. A lot of people need that community support. They need that, just that in group validation and support and help, and to understand that, yeah, you don't when you do have there's a couple different strategies where, one, if you're a super like you really, really need to be around people and keep your social thing, then you're gonna have to, you have to might do a little extra work, but you have to host the parties now.
Mm,
And don't even make it a big deal. Like you host the parties now. It happens to be a juice party. You got fresh juice over here. You got some cook them some nice taste. And this is where when you master the transition, you're going to be able to better prepare foods that other people are going to love.
yeah.
Because when we make food, people, you have all the meat eaters in the world come and they don't miss anything because we know how to do this. We know how to prepare mucus free foods in a way that's very filling to anybody, in transitional items, and just to bring in just enough mucus to, keep everybody satisfied. But that's the kind of thing. And we had in our coaching program, Monica, she had did that with, thanks killing. I'm not a fan at all of that particular, is Takora calls it a hella day, but Monica wanted to do it, and she created all this meal, and family came over and they loved it. There wasn't a speck of meat anywhere, no dairy. It was like mostly mucus free, some mucus lean stuff, and the family loved it. And so that was because, as opposed to the other way around, if she was to go out into their environment, then it's just very uncomfortable. And especially early on when if you're still craving some of those foods, and just being back in that environment, it's very easy to relapse. And I've seen that a bunch of times. You go and you're like, yeah, I've been doing this diet for a while. I can go and I can just hang out. I won't eat anything. And before you know it, you got a plate in front of you and you're like, and so that's definitely a thing where, yeah, the transition strategy all is very important for dealing with the social dynamic, because that is tough for a lot of people. And to further the point that you were just making earlier, in addition to transitioning the body, you are also transitioning your mind, your mindset, your understanding, because, and sometimes the body can transition faster than your mind can. If you really are letting your mind go through these transitions and these processes, then which I notice that's a piece a lot of people miss. Even the folks that skip over, because they'll skip over a whole bunch of stuff and be like, yeah, I'm doing this long fast, I'm doing this. It's like, how'd you transition? It's like, no, I didn't need to. I'm just doing this 100-day juice fast or something. And it's like, okay. And then those are the people I find that oftentimes fall victim to the dreaded uh vegan hostage former vegan hostage video,
Yes.
where they sit there and they're like, so I'm no longer vegan and I wanted to tell you all. And they would have been like the people that were the most hardcore advocates on social media, and then they come all out of nowhere one day, they make a video like, I'm no longer vegan and I want to tell you why, and da 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 da. And it's just like, they didn't transition. Like, pure and simple, if they would have transitioned properly, that would have not happened.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. We've seen that so many times. It's always the most hardcore, have to be the most extreme people that end up making those videos. And yeah, that's what I hope shows like this are going to help prevent things like that, because it doesn't have to happen that way. And it's not a race to any finish line. It's a continual process that we're all kind of going through. And yeah, I mean, there's no reason to feel like, yeah, you have to skip the transition. Like we've covered today in all these points, is that really everything is a transition. We're all transitioning at some level, but doing a transition in a intelligent way, um, even if you think you're skipping the transition, uh, like Spira just said, these are the people that typically are going to fall off and backtrack, and so it's really still part of the transition. It's just it's going to take you a lot longer, and it's going to be a
Yeah,
lot more
yeah.
painful. to learn the lessons that we need to learn. So and that also is very closely tied with my third kind of thing that I wrote down was, you know, uh, transitioning gives you a much better, more flexible, or just a more conducive environment for success for your mind. Um, and it helps people, I think, overcome issues of disordered thinking, disordered eating, really binging, cravings, cheat days, all these different things. I think when you go too fast, you make yourself vulnerable to all of these things because your mind hasn't caught up with, your body, as Professor Spira just said. And I think a lot of these issues that people face with these challenges with binging and all these things, disordered eating, it's really a manifestation of unresolved or repressed trauma from earlier in life at some point. Everybody experiences trauma in their life at some point, and I think it shows up differently for different people. And a lot of times, it can show up as anxiety. It can show up as you know, uh, binging. It can show up as, disordered eating. It can show up as a lot of different things. And people that get into the raw vegan lifestyle a lot of times are coming into it with those issues that are manifesting as, kind of disordered thinking around food.
Mhm.
And, when you transition, you're giving yourself your so what I've kind of learned is that when you experience trauma, you store it in two places, right? One is the subconscious mind, and the other is in the nervous system. So you have to allow your body and your nervous system to get out of that inflammatory fight or flight state that is messing with how you think. Because when the nervous system is always revved up, you've got those stress hormones going, you know, our mind doesn't work as efficiently. It doesn't work, you can't think as critically. Your awareness is much more narrow. And so by getting into this diet and doing it sustainably through the transition process and allowing you to release all that mucus and pus, and so your nerves start working better and your body is less inflamed, that is going to put you into that parasympathetic state, which allows the mind to become more aware of those traumas, maybe. And it gives you, more access to solutions and to just a clearer thought process around, what you're doing. And so you don't allow yourself to just have a knee jerk reaction that you might have had previously, to, if something doesn't go perfectly as you're going through the transition. It gives you more awareness and capability to make conscious, intelligent decisions about maybe some adjustments that you can make in the process. Like for me, if I were still eating, like Spira said, some people eat 6 avocados for a meal. I used to do that. I did that in the early days, when I was early in my transition, and I felt fine when I did that. It was like, because I was coming off of cheeseburgers and, steaks and all this stuff. So, but now if I can't even eat, really more than one avocado without really noticing the difference in how I feel, and my bowel movements and all that. So it's like, it's really allowing your body to and your nervous system to calm down so that you can have more insight into some of maybe the trauma that you could address that is causing you to have, run into these stumbling blocks, binging and cheat days and all this stuff, and, going to the party and having the plate of food in your face and giving into that. Find out why you're allowing that to happen. And I think the best way to do that is letting the parasympathetic state take over and allowing your mind to think more clearly.
And that's a, really important point, because as people start to get deeper into levels of fasting, because that's a whole topic within the context of the mucusless diet healing system. Again, where the fasting is different than what other people recommend. Now, Arnold Ehret coined the term intermittent fasting. However, in the past 10, 15 years, it was stolen from him and they reconstituted it into this weird keto intermittent concept that really doesn't pattern the original definition of the intermittent dynamic, which was that so if you start off being 100%, do a day 100% mucus free, where you are just 100% mucus free or 100% mucus free and raw for a day, but do that almost as a fasting level, like where you see what that experience is like. Then you do a day on just liquids, then maybe a day on just fruit juice, or 24-hour fruit juice fast, or 48-hour, 3-day, you do this over time to the point where it gets easy. You get all these repetitions in of the shorter periods of fasting, so that when you do start to do the longer fasting, then things like what you're talking about a lot, when you fast, any repressed emotions and childhood traumas and all that stuff come up to the surface. And like my mentor brother Air says, don't get scared if it gets too real, because it can get scary and real very quickly. And then that can mess up your fast, because then you get people scared and then they go break the fast eating something stupid that they shouldn't have ate, and it messes up their body. And that could be avoided if you go several months or even years where you're fasting one day a week. Some people, I know a lot of people that do that. They'll pick a day of the week or two days on the weekend or something, and they just do juice on that day. Or you have the folks that'll just fast once a month. There's a lot of women that I work with. They fast during as soon as their cycle starts. They're fasting immediately because it shortens it and it makes the symptoms almost disappear. And so that's their method. They'll fast once a month, every month. And so, when you do these shorter fasts more often over a longer period of time, you develop a real mastery, as opposed to the cleanse concept, where people, I'm doing a cleanse, I'm going to do a 21-day cleanse, I'm doing this. It's like, that's not a lifestyle. It's like when your lifestyle is your cleanse and it's not extreme, then you're going to get a lot more out of it. But the release of the traumas. I use something called the Sedona method, which is releasing technique. I found it to be, I actually was doing it even before I got into the diet. I've been practicing that method for 23 years.
Nice.
But I've gotten into all the different neurolinguistic programming and the different meditations and prayers and that kind of stuff. And you find what works for you, but you got to find something. Understand that has to be dealt with, whether you just sort of try to do it on your own without any extra techniques and just fasting. And some people do that, but it's not recommended. You want to be able to let go of those emotions and let all that flow, because it can get it's going to force you. And that's what the mucusless diet does. These fasting processes, it forces you to deal with yourself in a way that most people would rather not. That really, if they're honest about it, they really would rather not have to look that deeply at themselves in the mirror and deal with what comes up. There's a lot of folks, see, in my case, we talk about vegan for the animals concept. Now, for me, that wouldn't have worked before I started cleaning myself up. And this is a hot topic, the vegan, they're like, no, we just got to just show people how bad it is for the animals, and then their empathy. But you can't reason with somebody that has no empathy.
Yeah.
You can't reason with sociopath or psychopath. And I have a theory of a spectrum where we're all on this psychopathic spectrum somewhere, but as you get cleaner, you get more and more to the empathetic side of the spectrum. But just to exist in this reality, we can't be there are some people that do have that 100% empathetic, and they tend to not be super happy
Mhm.
because you're feeling way too many energies out here that are just rough. But because it's based on pus and mucus, and that's the other thing we talk about when you really get into it. All of the poor behavior in the world, find me find me the mass murderer or rapist or any of the above that's eating fruits and green leafy vegetables for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. We know what they were eating, and so I advocate, whenever you see something crazy going down, don't ask what were they thinking, ask what were they eating, because
Yes.
that's going to tell you the whole story. And people don't like to get into that. But what my experience was, emotionally, a bunch of months into my practice, and I was cleaning myself out. And here's the fun pictures. I don't know if
There
we
they
can see
are.
these in there. The
Nice.
mucoid plaque and the slime and all the stuff. So that I was getting all that stuff out of me. And so in 6 months, I did that, lost 100 pounds, really like 110 pounds back then. And totally just went from being really sick, having sleep apnea and chronic migraine headaches and chronic fatigue, bloating, all that stuff. In 6 months, I turned all of that around, and I got all of this slime, all that kind of stuff that came out of me. But it was around that time, around 6 months into doing this work, where I started to really feel guilt, all this like my consciousness rose to where I started to understand what it meant to eat a living being, what it meant. Because before it was just like whatever, it was just, this is how it is. Like, I just had no empathy at all for animals. I could care less. Then all of a sudden one day it hit me, and I'm laying in bed like crying for hours, just realizing what I had been doing, and understanding that some of the suffering that I'm going through now in this transition is all about me paying reparations for having done these crimes against the universe. And so that, because there's going to be points in the transition where you're sick or you're going through elimination, and you look to the heavens and just say, why do I feel so bad? Why do and you got to understand that, whether you want to use the word karma or cause and effect or whatever terminology you want to use, it's real. And you're going to have to deal with that cause and effect, because you ate and your ancestors ate foods that are diametrically opposed to the human experience. The body did its best to try to adapt to wrong living, but it can only do as good as it can. But now that we're going back 180 degrees in the other direction, we're gonna have to deal with some stuff,
Yeah.
here and there. And so to not be scared about that or surprised about it, because there is no other option. Because then people say, well, what if I just keep eating? It's like, well, with this, we at least there's a light at the end of the tunnel. In the other direction, there's an immediate casket. The casket is
Yeah.
a lot quicker. And so, but yeah, that's I got your book here. I tell
Oh,
everybody,
hey.
go out and get this, read this with your children, read it
Thank you.
yourself. But this is the kind of thing that is important to have around. And well, even as an adult, where once you start cleaning yourself up and your empathy starts to grow, then these kind of resources really help you, and speak to you and support you, where you're like, because you're realize you're having like aha moments. There was periods when I early in practicing the diet where it felt like I was having like 5 or 6 genuine aha moments every day.
Yeah.
Just like every day. And I wish I could say that still happens. It doesn't. But back then, like, it was just because everything was moving, and I was, taking action. Taking action is always important. That's the first step, taking action. But then It was just like all these different things. Just walking down the street, I might have two aha moments, just seeing things or seeing people interact or just human behavior and that kind of stuff. And so along your journey, it's good to have these kind of resources where you can see like, okay, get that perspective, that humanity perspective that's coming from a place of cleanliness, that's not coming from a place of addiction, addiction to pus and mucus forming foods.
Yeah. Yeah, man, there was a lot in there that, yeah, I had some aha moments just listening to you. But that's so true. Everything you said, I resonate with, and it was a lot of my experiences as well. It was pretty close. I don't remember exactly when, but it was pretty close to like 6 months in that, the animal sentience and the realization that, what I was eating, who I was eating. I realized who I was eating, not what I was eating.
Mm,
And just everything that went into that. Because I worked in a meat market for, going through high school and in college, and
wow.
uh, I did recognize that these used to be animals, but I just didn't have the connection that, they were sentient beings. I kind of understood that with my like family dog or cat, but farm animals were just like some removed creature that, was just like a robot. So, um, and with so yeah, I mean, like I liked animals growing up, but um, it wasn't until I did a juice fast. I had been eating raw foods for, like you said, like probably close to 6 months or something, and then I saw Earthlings, and I too was laying in bed just bawling. I felt so betrayed, from society, not knowing, like nobody told me this, and I had been, participating in this, really animal sacrifice 3 times a day, basically for 25 years, and it was just very difficult. I was very angry. I was very sad. I was just feeling so many things, and yeah, once I got through that, it was literally like, yeah, 5 aha moments every single day. It was just, your consciousness is just expanding so rapidly. um and I too wish that it was still happening today, but yeah, it still happens. It's just not quite as frequent. um and so yeah, what was I gonna say? I had like three things, and then I kept hearing you say something else, and I was like, oh, that too. But yeah, I mean, I guess there was a comment in here, that said Doug Graham has been at this game for decades, and he insists that going completely raw vegan in one step is actually easier than doing it gradually. Um, you know, I I would disagree, just based on the people that I've worked with, based on the experience that I've heard from most all of the, um, the educators that are still out there today. Like, to me, it seems like most of them went through a transition period, and the people that don't do that, like Spira said, they're the ones making the anti-vegan videos. A few years down the line, and nothing against 80-10-10 or Dr. Graham. He's done some great work and he's making a huge difference. But I've met so many people that have tried 80-10-10 and not been able to sustain it. So those people are falling off too. So
Right.
no one way is
And look at what they did. They so it started 80-10-10, and then somebody invented this concept raw till 4.
yeah,
So instead of just, well, that's transition, like you're trying,
yes,
that's transit, no, we'll be raw till 4. And then it's like they're literally trying to insert some kind of transition into the mix,
yep,
while and of course there, I'm not as you probably know, I don't get into the calorie theories and a lot of
yep,
the traditional nutrition theories, which to me is weird for vegans to try to just blindly accept these nutritional theories that were based on and created by meat eaters in the 1800s who basically already thought that their diet was perfect.
Yep.
And so they created a system, a dietary system around what they thought was perfect because they were very self-absorbed people. They was like everything they did was great. And but people don't really understand that or look back at it. And so they just get into these calorie theory and all this stuff. And I'm just, yeah, I'm yeah, not a fan of that. But because that was what was real weird with that the raw till 4 thing, where it was like, okay, we're raw, okay, we're all till 4, and then at 4, they were eating a bunch of cooked mucus forming foods. Like, well, if you're going to
Yeah.
eat cooked, then eat cooked mucus free.
Hmm.
White rice and cooked what was it? White rice. I think some of them had videos. They were making vegan pizzas and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like,
Yes. And
you know,
adding processed sugar to smoothies and things, I'm just like, why would you do that?
yeah, yeah, that's yeah. But that just goes to show in real life, transition, whether you acknowledge it or not, transition is the name of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, some people might do well just doing it overnight. I know there's some people that claim that did that and it worked, but for almost all of the people that I've worked with, this seems to be the way that works best. So, you got to
Well,
do
the
it.
one addendum I'd make to that is all these people that say overnight, again, they're focusing on, and their main goal is to be 100% raw by any means necessary. So if
Yeah.
that means eating a whole lot of mucus forming foods, which most of them do throughout the day,
Yep.
then it's better to be raw and eat a whole bunch of mucus forming foods than to not be raw but be mostly mucus free. But
Yes.
they don't have that mucus free component in their mind, so they don't even know that's really a thing that should be valued. They're just, again, it's all raw, like that's what it is.
Yeah.
And so it's totally different, because what I definitely haven't seen is somebody go 100% raw and mucus free overnight.
Hmm.
And if somebody wants to give an example of that, and of somebody that did do that in the comments or some, I'd love to see it, because I'll
Yeah.
follow them on YouTube. I'll check them out, but I haven't seen that, because it's much harder to be 100% mucus free than most people would think.
Yeah.
That hasn't, and that's why we respect it. It's something, it's something to be respected, and something that you work toward, as opposed to, again, like this tortoise and the hare, just trying to get to this finish line, but you're not going to be able to sustain it. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's easy to do really long fast, and people don't really understand why, but it is easy to do longer fasts when you're earlier in your transition, you're earlier in your journey. But when you it's not the same when you do a fast like that 20 years in. That's a whole different situation, like physiologically, and what that fast means physiologically. It's a whole different situation. But
Yep.
that's the kind of stuff that takes time and experience to really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah. Do you have any other thing that you want to mention before we hop into the Q&A?
Nah, man, I appreciate you bringing up this topic, because I think it's so important. And I used to talk a lot more about, and I'm probably going to start talking more about fasting again, because I'm noticing that people still don't know how to break a fast, and they really
Right.
don't. I thought some of that stuff was common knowledge by now, but I'm finding that it's not. So I'm going to have to talk about that again.
Yeah.
But for a long time, I really just focused on talking about transition and the transition diet, because no one else was. And I was just seeing too often people that otherwise wouldn't have to fall off the wagon and relapse in such a major way, uh, if they'd had the transition methodology, and developed a respect for it. Because it's one thing too to have heard about it and it makes sense, but then to actually do it, look into it, find out how it fits into your life and use those methodologies, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's why one, I always say, knowing does not precede doing. Again, you can read about things all you want, but until you actually do it, it's no, it's not the same thing. And that's also another reason why it's important that if you're struggling, seek out the help from somebody that knows what they're talking about, like Professor Spira. It makes it such a better experience for the transition, to have advice from somebody that has been through it and that knows, has been working with people that have gone through struggles, and can guide you. So before we get into the Q&A, do you want to share where people can seek out your services or find out more about what you're putting out there?
Sure. Yeah, you can find me at mucusfreelife.com is my main website. You can sign up for my newsletter and mailing list. And I try to, whenever I have events coming up, I try to announce that. I have a webinar coming up on Tuesday, and you can go to, if you sign up, you'll get an email about it if you're interested in that free training session. And yeah, I'm on Instagram, prof.spira. And on Facebook, we have a Facebook support group, Professor Arnold Ehret Mucusless Diet Healing System. I have a Pro Spira account and a Professor Spira account on there. So, and then my YouTube channel is Prof Spira, Mucus Free Life Mucus Free Life LLC. And so, yeah, that's where you can find me and connect, and definitely like let's learn together.
Amazing. All right, yeah, and I'm gonna put all that in the description box down below for anybody that needs the link. It'll be there. Um, all right. So yeah, let's. Are there any questions? I haven't actually seen anybody put a question in here for a little while. I think there was the Dr. Graham comment, and then let's see. Um,
Thank you, Sherry. The spirit skin is so gorgeous. I
oh
appreciate
yes,
that.
it is. It really is. Let's see. Yeah, anybody got any questions for us about the transition process, or whatever comes to mind? We are here
Yeah.
to answer those questions. And let's see. Sherry said, "Anyone eating good fruit while you're watching? I'm eating an organic apple." How's the fruit situation in Ohio?
It's decent. It's because it's been, there's places where it's worse. And it's seasonal. We're getting close to the fall, so there'll be a lot of really good apples will be coming out. A lot of great vegetables. So this
Hmm.
part of the country, the vegetables, especially this time of year, are great as far as the, uh, if I go to the farmer's market and I can get all kinds of zucchini and cucumbers and really great tomatoes and just all of that kind of stuff. The culinary the culinary vegetables slash
Yes.
fruit things, seed bearing plants, so they're technically fruit, but we use them as vegetables.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's really good. And then the when the mango and it's mango season, the mangoes are really good. We'll just get those from different parts of the world, but they're really good. uh we have a yearly event dedicated to Arnold Ehret, Professor Arnold Ehret Day celebration, and people have been getting me into. So last year, Eli Martyr came and he got us into like the frozen durian, because you can't. There's no. It has to be frozen if it's going to be here.
Yeah.
And but it's those boxes. It was those boxes of the frozen durian, and he kind of showed us how to, like, which ones to get and how to get it ready and everything. And we had the party where everybody was like, "All right, you got to eat this 3 times." And for people that don't like it immediately, you get
Yes.
taste buds got to get used to it. And so it kind of, yeah, it took that, by that third time I was hooked. And so yeah, this year we've been hitting that, and there's a place up the street that sells it, and yeah, I've been getting a little deeper into the durian. That stuff is
Nice.
pretty good.
Ah, it's magical. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's by far my favorite fruit when I can get it. And yeah, we have a few Asian markets here that have it usually. So every once
Yeah.
in a while, we'll go pick some durian up and really enjoy that. Oh, I almost forgot. All right, guys. Since this is the Q&A section or session or whatever you want to call it, we got our new Q&A scene. So we're gonna hop over into the Q&A scene. Here we are. Doesn't it look
Oh, nice.
fancy?
All right. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, again, any other questions you guys want to ask us, um, we would be happy to answer. Um, yeah, I was gonna say I've seen like Michigan farmers markets. They have like I don't know if they were locally grown like stone fruits like peaches.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah. Peaches, the Concord grapes will be coming out
yep,
in the next month. Those
yep.
are amazing.
Yeah, we get the grapes. We have a Concord grape grower in our area that goes to our farmers market. But yeah, peaches, we don't get really any of those like nice fruits other than apples here in Minnesota.
Mm,
Our farmers markets, we basically get we get melons, watermelon, cantaloupe, apples, and grapes. That's about it for fruits. But yeah, we do like you guys. We have some really good vegetables. We get a lot of really great greens, and carrots and lettuces and things like that, kale. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, the honeydew has been really good this year.
Ooh, the
The
honeydew. I actually haven't had
honeydew
too much honeydew.
really good.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I've been surprised because sometimes, because I can tell if it's good, you check it and you kind of palm it a little bit, and if it's just a little gushy, not much, like it just kind of feels like almost like a head,
yeah.
then it's gonna be good. And yeah, I've got a couple really good ones. It's like, okay, this is yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt about the watermelon. The watermelon I'm getting at our
Yeah,
farmers market.
watermelon was good this year too.
Oh
Yeah.
man, so good. So yeah, all right. We had a couple questions here. Um, Looks like Annie's in the house. What's up, Annie? Thank you for asking a question. Let's see. I listened to someone this morning that said a raw food diet will age you faster. He suggested always steam veggies and nuts in your diet. I will be 65 and I'm eating all raw. Huh. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, the factor that people leave out is how much mucus is in the diet. Is it a raw diet that consists of a lot of mucus forming foods? Or is it a mucus free raw diet? That's kind of the question.
Yeah.
Uh, because I've noticed that there are some folks in the raw community that do eat a lot of mucus forming raw foods who seem to age a little bit quicker than maybe they would have to, if they, because a lot of that too, that gets into, at some point you want to have an audit of your overall personal health and where you are physiologically. Understand, and one of the things that's discussed in the mucus diet book, understanding things like your latent diseases versus acute diseases. And these latent diseases are things that you come to the diet with, or this lifestyle with, and as you go along, like you got to understand how those eliminations go. If you took a lot of drugs, pharmaceutical or legal or whatever, like whatever drugs you took, that stuff is still encapsulated in your system. And as you start to clean yourself up, that stuff starts to become unearthed. And if it comes unearthed too quick, then you can have problems. And so I've seen folks in that kind of category where if they try to go too far too fast, or even folks that be like, I'm gonna eat nothing but fruit, no transition, and then just do a grape cure fast or something like that. It's just it's like the roulette wheel where you might be fine. You might do a 2 month grape fast out of the blue, heal yourself, you clean yourself out, and it's great. But then there's a lot of folks that's not going to make it that long, and going to unearth a lot of really nasty stuff into their system. They're horrible heart palpitations, and could get bedridden and this kind of stuff. And so I just find that, yeah, like that transition without that, and in the methodology, the transitional methodology can run into a lot of problems and age yourself quicker, because I've seen that also with people that are very acidic. There's two types, according to Eric. We look at human physiology in two different types. So you have lean types with a lot of uric acid in the system, and then fatty types, or which we would call mucus types. And so if you are a lean type and you haven't neutralized a lot of those acids in your system yet, so you're lean, meaning you're the type of person that can eat anything you eat. You can eat as much as you want, and you're going to stay skinny. They high metabolism, so called. But the way we analyze that is, it's not that you have that it's a good thing. It's that your body is so acidic that it deals with and eliminates the mucus in a different way, those forms of food. And so those are the cases where I see folks that were uric acid types. They got 100% raw, but they never really dealt with that acid in their system. And they also might not be eating enough, because that's one thing. Sometimes people will be surprised. I'll tell them, you need to eat more, because you need to eat enough to create the nice bowel movements, eat enough to alkalize the system. And so I'll see they'll be dehydrated, and because they're just so acidic, it's not like they need to just go drink more water. That's not going to help. They need to neutralize those acids and eliminate that stuff. But those are the folks that I've seen that were 100% raw, but look like they aged themselves prematurely.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. And I mean, like, there's just so much to that. Like
Yeah, I
you
mean, that's a
said,
deep one. Yeah.
it is. Like you said,
Yeah.
it really, some of these people are coming into this raw lifestyle from severe illness, and their body has been through a lot. And so, it's not, again, diet is a huge factor in our health, but it's not some magic time machine that's going to put you back to looking like you're, 20 years old. Um but when you look at it in terms of like advanced glycation end products, some of these chemicals that we know cause DNA damage and aging, when you get into a raw diet, you're avoiding almost all of those. So, unless there might be a few here and there, but for the most part, you're pretty much eliminating those cooked food, byproducts. And so that in itself, in my mind, would be a reason why it wouldn't, you know, uh, hasten your aging. It would allow you to age at either a normal rate or even maybe a reduced rate. And again, like, so I'm curious, do you drink any water with your diet?
Yeah, but it's not it's not like I have to. I mean, I
Yeah,
didn't drink water for like the first 10 years,
me
where
too.
I only just had fresh juice and that was it.
Yep.
As far as liquids, then it was really over the past 10 so years where I started drinking water, but it's more just, I don't know. It's not like it's not part of a plan or anything. It's just
Yeah.
like more if I'm out and about, I just have a little jar of water with me and just sip on it. Is more of a, kind of, I don't know. just,
Yeah.
just I like it.
Sure.
But yeah, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, same here. I actually have noticed I feel better when I've been including a little more water in my diet, or just, in my daily routine,
Mhm.
on top of, my raw, mostly raw diet. So I think dehydration is one thing. And of course the liquid in our fruits and vegetables is going to be the optimal water for us. But yeah, my personal experience is, having some additional water can be beneficial, if if only for helping with elimination, because
Yeah,
dehydration
yeah.
does cause
Mhm.
constipation. um, and I think that, like you said, elimination is so important in you know overall health, but also aging. I think if you're not able to eliminate efficiently and properly, then you're going to be reabsorbing a lot of the toxic material that your body is trying to get rid of, and that in itself is going to cause potential aging and just inflammation and damage to the system. So yeah, I think also, like Spira said, eating enough to form those nice bowel movements and making sure you're well hydrated, and getting in the antioxidants and the colors in your food are I think it is if there's such thing as an anti-aging diet, I would say it would be the raw vegan diet. But again, it's not a magic filter that you're gonna put on your real life. It's just something that's gonna help your body to function how it was meant to function. And unfortunately, aging is just a part of life, and so yeah, that's just how it goes. But I don't think that it would make you age faster. And also I look at you know also, like Spira said, people might be eating like um, you know cashew cheesecake, 5 times a week or something, something really heavy and
Right.
dehydrated things, and all this other raw, gourmet stuff. So that's going to slow down elimination. That's going to introduce um, higher levels of fat in your diet. I did see somebody asked a
Yeah, which
question.
that yeah.
Do you have a recommended or like a preferred percentage of fat in your diet?
No. Well, I mean, oh, 0 is what we try to strive for, but for transitional purposes, you just add just enough to make the transition feel comfortable or more comfortable, because it's helps to slow down the elimination. That's part one of the principles that you get into when you start to understand the transition diet is first and foremost. So we have a paradigm of elimination. So it's different from what we call the additive principle, which is standard nutrition science concept, is this additive concept where you have to replenish things in the body. You have to add certain nutrients and minerals and vitamins, or you'll be deficient in this kind of. We don't have that paradigm. Our paradigm is that of elimination, where the body is relatively self-sustaining when it's clean, and you eliminate. And so we eat for the purpose of elimination. So if depending on what my cravings are doing, if it helps me eat a big salad to have a little bit of oil involved in that, or to have some avocado or something like that, then I would then do that, because in the long run that's going to help you. You got to have that salad. It's going to help you eliminate, versus. But in terms of having it for nutritional value, uh no, if you don't, I'd say have 0% if you can. The only reason that we use fat from a mucus free perspective is to help slow down the elimination, and help us be eat as mucus free as possible.
Nice. Yeah, and just another example of people that might worry like, oh, I'm not going to get my my essential fatty acids. Um, you can look at Robbie Barbero. I would say he's practicing probably close to a mucusless diet, because he doesn't consume, from what I understand, he doesn't consume really very any nuts or seeds, maybe a little chia seed here
Mm.
and there, but and he's shown his blood work, and he's got his EPA and DHA were really good. So for those people that are out there concerned about that sort of a thing, he's an example of showing the actual blood work,
Mm.
of what eating this way can provide. So
Yeah, because people don't understand, that when people get into the absorption, or even we were talking about water before, when you're cellularly constipated is at the beginning of the mucusless diet says all disease, no matter what name it is known by medical science, is constipation,
Mm,
the clogging up of the entire pipe system of the human body, not just bowel constipation, but constipation cellularly throughout the whole body can be looked at as a series of tubes, a bunch of tubes, and whether it's the nervous system or your venous system or your GI tract, it's a bunch of tubes. And when there are things that inhibit the flow of energy or the flow, or in general, vitality equals power minus obstruction. When there's too much obstruction involved, then you're going to have problems. And add on to that obstruction plus acidosis, then now you're damaging cells. The body starts to eat itself from the inside out. And so that becomes the priority, is regardless, and this is where again we're different, like where regardless of if it's something cooked or if it's not, is it leaving behind slime, is it leaving behind acids, what is this food that we're eating leaving behind in the body, and how efficiently and quickly does it go through and eliminate? Because you could have a perfect raw diet, but if you're only having like a bowel movement every other day, or you're not eating enough to really even create those real good bowel movements, and you got this uneliminated slime residue that's just sitting in your, collecting dust in your colon and intestines and stuff, then you're going to start having problems.
yeah. How many bowel movements a day do you have?
Usually three.
Yeah.
Yeah, two. Yeah, two or three.
Yeah, me too.
Yep.
For sure. Um, and I used to go days between bowel movements before I got
Mm,
into this, way of living.
right.
So yeah, it's
Which unfortunately is very typical out here
yes,
in society, where people will just go
us,
days and with no bowel movement, and then wonder why they don't feel good and their back hurts, or
yeah,
or they do create, and that's in that level of constipation again. That's what is contributing to all this poor behavior that we see. And it's once you start to see the world through that lens, it gets very clear what's going on, what's at the foundation of all of this chaos.
yep. Um, let's see. What does Professor Spira think of coconut aminos and transitioning off of salt, and also on apple cider vinegar, or it looks like any vinegars or nutritional yeast?
Mm-hmm. So I'm not a fan of vinegar. We try to use that very sparingly in terms of for transitional purposes. Definitely don't look at it as anything that's like a health food or some kind of how they've tried to market it that way. That's how
Hmm.
a lot of these things have been marketed to be quote nutritional yeast. There's
Yeah,
nothing nutritional about it. Can you use it to help you on your transition if you need it? Yeah. You could, if you're making some kind of dressing or whatever, that kind of thing.
yep,
Is it something that you want to use every day for the rest of your life? No. You want to transition off of that. uh Salt is something I'm a little more aggressive with telling people to try to get off of salt sooner than later. There are some alternatives that are better if you're craving salt. Uh, and you also want to look at your adrenal glands and your overall health if you're like really craving salt, where it's just like, oh, I need salt,
yeah,
uh, that kind of thing. But that's, of all of those things, that's probably salt and vinegar are two of the things that I'm like, you want to get off of those as soon as you can. And for the vinegar, you got lemon juice. And for the salt, you got Dulce or whatever. That's that new product, that green, whatever the name of that green salt stuff. And
oh,
there's things that you can use
yeah,
if you're to help with that process. But aminos, that's another one of the, I'm not a fan of that kind of stuff.
hmm,
If you use it here and there for transitional purposes, or it finds itself into a dressing or something like that, then it's definitely not the end of the world. Uh, but yeah, it's definitely not something that I would be that I'd want to go down that rabbit hole too deep and be there for too long with those, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way about all that. So, um, what about, let's see, I'm new here. How many days do you fast to clean mucus from your body?
Well, I mean, that depends. That totally depends on you and your physiology. And that's where I recommend check out the Mucusless Diet book and get into the system as opposed to just isolating fasting divorced from the overall system. When you want to start to transition and then get into a fasting period, and intermittently you can go back and forth between your transition diet period and your fasting period, and you'll systematically remove the mucus and the waste over time. And and another thing we do that's not, some folks are against it. We do lemon juice and distilled water enemas in our little community, and we found that to be real helpful, particularly during the like when you're fasting and you got all this stuff building up and stuff that's not being eliminated. To, I know some fasting advocates that don't do any colon irrigation, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, and I've seen some bad results for people for that, where they just stuff because they get constipated and they're sitting there like, no matter how much water they drink or whatever it is they're drinking, that waste isn't coming out. And then hit that lemon enema, then it's like, and so yeah, but those are all the tools. I mean, that's like real naturopathy. When you start getting into this, we have a number of different tools at our disposal, and as you really educate yourself on the different tools that we have, then you put yourself in a position to really be able to help yourself and help other people if you want, in terms of, because it's simple. What do they always say? It's not easy, but it is simple. The
Yes.
principles are very simple, principles of elimination.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have any thoughts on nightshade family, the nightshade family, potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants? Do you avoid those? Do you think they're okay, or what do you think?
I do it on a case by case basis, so not a whole family. We don't just ban a whole family. We look to see, does the item produce mucus in the body or not, and and also do they need to be prepared in some way? Because as Arid says, it's not that all cooking is evil. It's that you have to have right cooking with the right items. And so something like a baked sweet potato, I would not recommend somebody eat sweet potato raw. I guess they want to juice it or something, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
not a fan of that.
I'm not
But
either.
bake it, you want it to be well baked, not over baked, not too long, but you really want it to be well baked, and it's relatively mucus free when you do that. Same thing with acorn squash or butternut squash or spaghetti squash. There's a little starch content, but relatively speaking, but by the time it goes through you, and if you have it with a nice big salad or some greens or something, it's not going to sit in you long enough to turn into some kind of nasty stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the name of the game. So when you're talking about like white potatoes, that's something that I try to recommend people get off of immediately, because we have the sweet potato solution. So to me, there's not a reason. Now, this is of course going to go against all the starch solution people. Definitely don't like me, because I'm
Yeah.
like, that I don't even understand how that even. And I understand, but like,
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that to me is wild that they developed this whole theory around like white potato fasting and stuff. It's like,
Right.
oh man, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's case by case. You want to avoid the foods that create mucus.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, that makes sense to me. How do you keep your brain young and avoid dementia? Carl wants to know.
Well, one, I mean, practicing the mucusless diet, cleansing yourself. I mean, I've actually been, what is this, day 7? I've been doing a little fast. I'm not somebody that announces my fast usually. I just do them and talk about them after the fact. But I've been
Same.
just on a little cleanse, just a nice little reset, not a big deal. But that definitely helps in terms of keeping the mind, just because it's really just removal of obstruction, keeping everything flowing. Uh and exercise. I'm not a big hardcore exercise, but I try to do it every day.
Hmm.
I do something, get my stretching in, get my, I don't do anything real fancy in terms of working out, but I'll, hit the gym and do this kind of, all that kind of stuff. Uh, and I'm always studying and analyzing. So just in terms of intellectually, I don't really have, I don't have a lot of things where, which can be a blessing and a curse. I mean, I don't have a lot of time where my mind kind of shuts down and chills out. And because I don't play a lot of video games or watch a lot of TV or anything like that, so
Yeah.
I'm tend to be engaged intellectually all day, and I'm used to it, so it's not tiring or in any way. It's how I am. But yeah, you just keep those neural pathways kicking, and yeah,
Yep.
and
Nice.
doing what you're passionate about. I would add that on doing things that you love to do, you can harm yourself, in my opinion, if when you feel like you're forced to do things that you're really not built to do, then that's problematic, and that's
Hmm.
going to create some mental kind of problems. And the thing is, on the mucusless diet or just on this kind of raw path, it gets way harder for you to do things that are opposed, diametrically opposed to your being.
Yeah.
So things that you could have done, because what you would have did is, ate the cheeseburger, had a piece of pizza, then go in there and do whatever it was, or go and do the manual labor, do this, do whatever it was that, um, go work for the man and that kind of thing. But that gets a lot harder when you are cleaning yourself up. At least that's been my experience. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but I always like to ask people, what did you do when you were a child? What kinds of things did you like to do? And are you doing an adult version of that now? And and I have and I have some friends that aren't the ones that are the happiest, are even if they're working in construction. I got a couple friends that do construction, and that he said they like taking things apart when they were young. you know
Yep.
I didn't really do that. Like, I like building with blocks, and so I didn't take things apart. I didn't become passionate about that. What I did do was I had a Fisher Price tape recorder, and I acted like I had my own radio show, and I had a little keyboard, and I was trying to invent music and record myself and doing. So I was doing, as a child, doing an adult version now
Yeah.
of what I did when I was a child. I played business. I had this thing called My First Business. And so I'm like 5, 6 years old, acting like literally acting like an entrepreneur, running a business and selling things. I would sell things to my grandma and my aunt. And so I encourage people, as you're going through this cleansing process, that's part of you want to do a little bit of that, say past life regression. Just go back to your childhood and explore. And and for some that had a tougher situation, again, you're gonna have to deal with that. But you want to find out what does your inner child want to do. What were you really put here to do, in terms of, and it's not always necessarily just like an obvious job situation. I got another friend that was just really good at a young age, just has a mind of really understanding just how business and governments work and espionage and this kind of stuff, and develop those skills at a young age, and are able to use them now in creative ways. And so it doesn't always just, but I just have this theory that you can figure that out. But I've always say, do something that you're passionate about, have clear objectives and goals for your life, be working towards something that's bigger than you. That's most important when you're really uh, passionate about something and focused on your mission, then it makes this path a lot easier. Just as far as, and that could be for some folks, that's going to be their, their family, their community, if they're educators, if they're authors, whatever it is. I mean, there's so much stuff, but it's generally not uh working for, where it gets harder to work for other people, because you're working for their dream.
Yes.
You're at the factory, and that's somebody else's dream and somebody else's vision, and so this gets you in line with your creativity and your yourself, and being honest with where you are. And so then you get inspired to start building your world. I always talk about that is you you can't wait. Nobody's going to build your world for you. You can't wait, where people, because people love to complain
Yes.
all the time about society, and the schools are bad and this and that, and it's like, and and at the end of the day, we gotta create our own environment, our own world. Yeah, it's a lot harder. It takes more vision, that visionary element, but to me, it's worth it. This is just, it is what it is. And so yeah.
Yeah. So much great stuff there. I agree. Following your passion, doing, I grew up, me and my buddy Brad, we would draw mazes all the time, and things like that, and draw and write stories and things. And so that's why I really liked writing that children's book. I actually plan to make like at least 5 more children's books, but yeah, and just writing the books and coming up with different concepts to help people understand it. That was something I always loved doing. So it keeps you young, it keeps your mind sharp, and it just keeps, like you said, your creativity activated. Because being creative, I think we touched on this last week. Creativity is what we're here to do. We're here to be creative and express what we have within us. And if you're just going to a 9 to 5 job and you're just doing the company, you know, uh, you know, what they tell, every step they just tell you to do, you're not using that creativity. And so that's why I think so many people are so unhappy without even realizing that's contributing to their unhappiness, is that they're not using any sort of creativity in their life. And yes, I completely agree. Once you get into this lifestyle, you start clearing up your mind, you clear out the pus and mucus from your body, you start your awareness of the situation you're in, not using your creativity, not being passionate about what you're doing in life. It's such a big factor in that. And also, I would say the chemicals that we expose ourselves to. I think chemicals are one of the biggest reasons why people have dementia or any other um, you know mental issues, because one, these chemicals really affect the gut, and when the gut's all messed up, the mind is going to be all messed up. Also, you got to look at the high protein diets everybody's on. Those are clearly linked to uh, issues
Yeah.
with cognitive function later in life.
Yeah. and
Heavy
and and
metals.
that well, in that which I will not mention, so that you don't get be demonetized or
Thank,
deplatformed,
thank you,
that I
thank you.
hope everybody knows what I'm
Yes,
talking about.
yes,
They made,
yeah.
boy, I've had to take down like 30 videos off my channel for that topic, but
Have you really? I
yeah, yeah,
wondered. I saw you talking about
yeah.
it. I wondered if that was going to be an issue, but
It's been rough. It's been a
yeah,
rough,
I know, man.
rough couple years navigating that,
Yeah.
but that goes along with your, we talk about all the heavy metals and the
Yes.
chemicals and the things that
Yes.
just totally degenerate our cognitive abilities and
Yep.
unnecessarily.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the water people are drinking. Oh my gosh, like the chemical they people don't realize they add, fluoride is a neurotoxin.
yeah,
They don't realize that the fluoride that's in water isn't like a naturally occurring fluoride that would be in the soil. People don't realize they add aluminum to
yeah, yeah,
drinking water. That the chlorine is bad enough on its own, but then it has disinfection byproducts that are, as it comes in contact with organic matter, as it's getting to your house, it's creating more toxic chemicals. And so there's so many things that people are exposing themselves to in their daily life that has an impact on, like you said, everything in the body is just tubes, right? Even the brain, it's just a bunch of tubes running through. And you know, sleep is another one to help clear out the brain. They say that when you sleep, that's when the brain really is able to, cleanse itself. And most people aren't sleeping. But yeah, the chemicals interfering with all that, and heavy metals and all that chemicals, on top of all the other stuff like the following your passion and stuff like that. So those are some of the things that I come to mind when I think about what's going to affect cognitive function later in life. You mess with your hormones your entire life, you can't expect everything to be functioning properly. And most of the chemicals that we expose ourselves to are endocrine disruptors, and they affect the nervous system, the brain,
I
the
mean, I cannot believe it's 2023. They still put mercury in people's mouth.
yes, I
What are you
know.
talking about? I mean, because I'm surprised at how many, because I thought, maybe I've worked with a few elders and some people in their 70s. As over the years I'm working with young people that have mercury that got to get the mercury extracted. And I'm like,
Yes.
what is he doing? What is going on out here? That just makes, even in a pus and mucus world, that doesn't seem to make, I can't make that make sense. Like that they would still, and I've read up on the history of it, and it's a very strange history that they would even still let that be a thing,
Yeah.
that wouldn't be banned. But they, man, yeah, this toxic. But what you're talking about, the consciousness of all that kind of stuff as you clean yourself up, that's part of those aha moments, that aha period that you go through
Yes.
where you're just realizing all this stuff. He's like, oh wow, oh man, I didn't think about that. And it's just, yeah. And but then too, that you also don't want to get too uh you don't want to get too overwhelmed with trying to avoid every little thing, because then
Yeah.
you get real, because I see people get into that problem where they start, then they get scared to live. They don't want to, like, oh, I'm going to touch that or get rid of, and people would probably, I mean, if there was something that people would get on me about, if they saw, like, I know I don't really wash stuff well, like I should, I probably should wash things better and stuff, but I'm not, you know
Yeah.
it is, but I'm not scared of bacterias and this and that and all that kind of, like, I just don't, that's not a part of my world.
Yep.
I don't like bad smells. So
Mm.
that's how if something don't smell good, then I don't want that around me, so that's how I deal with that. So
Yep.
yeah, I don't want stuff that's going to smell bad. I don't want that in my world. But as
Yes.
far as being scared of, like, oh, I'm going to get this bacteria, this microbe, or this, is like, man, I ain't worried, man. That stuff is so easy to eliminate when you know
Yep.
how to just flush whatever it is. It's not gonna. There's nothing for it to hang out with in my body for the most part,
Right.
and if it is, I'll flush that out so quick, and
Yep.
it's not even an issue.
Agreed. Yeah. Same here. Um, let's see. JC said, I have seen many Oh, Annie said she's in Ohio too. So you guys are neighbors. Um, JC said, I have seen many raw vegans who do indeed look decades younger than their chronological age. Yeah. I mean, it's
Oh yeah.
definitely, yeah, definitely. Annie's very low fat. Sherry says, look at the faces of these two men on screen. I'd say the raw vegan diet reverses chronological age. Yeah, there you go. Lori Knight says, let's see. Yes, I've seen so much on this topic and I'm currently trying to avoid tomatoes, but it's difficult. I haven't seen any difference so far. Yeah, and I think that's the importance of testing it on yourself and actually putting in the work to not just listen to what's out there, and maybe just, you have to experience it to know for sure if that's something that affects you. Um,
I see one. Yeah, the part where they're talking about the aging and the genetic. So
Okay.
my thing is like, if I hadn't gone on this path, one, I don't know if I'd even still be here, because I honestly thought I'd have been one of those uh statistics of people that died that got a stroke when they're late 30s or
Mm,
something like that. So I don't even think I'd be here. But again, look at so what, that's 19 years old on the left, and I look old, like way older. When I got on the diet, it's like I looked like a 15-year-old or something when I was, and
yeah.
so yeah, like it makes a big difference, just cleaning, just staying clean, just having a colon that doesn't have all that filth in it. Even if you are eating some mucus forming foods, or it's not, you don't have a perfect diet, or you haven't, but if you're cleaning yourself out and you're relatively on the right path and being mucus free, you're still going to see a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lori says anti-aging may be happening internally. It seems the external aging is, yeah, genetically based. Yeah, and as you just said, like you feel like I used to have, constant congestion. I had aches and pains. I had, um, headaches and like really just uh, inflammation and just loads of things. And now, I feel literally like I'm 20 years old within me, right? Like how I feel super young.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't bring my hair back, but it definitely brought back a lot of the youthfulness and my creativity. Really, it brought out my creativity. So I think when you are feeling young internally, that makes it so much easier to tap into that creativity. And so, yeah, I think that's another benefit of eating this way.
Oh yeah.
Do you have a favorite salad dressing?
It's changed over the years. I lemon. So for years I would do, like, and I know the anti-oil people would be mad, but like the extra virgin olive oil with lemon juice,
Okay.
and that was, be pretty standard. Or maybe I put some herbs or something in there. If I am being 100% mucus free with no oil, then I'll make some stuff out of cucumber, kind of like cucumber dressings, where I
Hmm.
just put a cucumber in a blender with a cucumber and a tomato with some spices or aromatic herbs, and then put that on top of the salad, and that's pretty good.
Nice.
And yeah, so that's kind of the stuff. Now there was a few things early on. I would buy, there was a couple vinegar free dressings that I don't recommend people get now, but like I used them. So if you need to go down that path, you can.
Yeah.
But the main thing for me was just that they were vinegar free.
Cool. Sherry says, "Wow, 7 days and he's doing a live interview. I feel like I'd be bed resting if I was on day 7 of a fast." Have you noticed over time as you've done fasting, has your experience during the fast changed?
Yeah, because I know what it is. I know how my body operates in it. I know how I feel during it. I've just done it so many times where I've went into it and out of it, where I know, that's part of the mastery that I talk about. I talk about the mastering the the different components within the mucusless diet healing system. You have the art of fasting, the art of transition dieting, the art of incorporating various naturopathic approaches or tools. You got your enemas, you have your herbology, you have your sunbathing, super important to me, your
Hmm.
exercise and breath work and meditate. So all of those things, putting all those different things together, is the art of practicing the lifestyle, practicing the mucusless diet healing system. But yeah, no, I got a lot of, just have a lot of experience with the fasting over the years. I've done quite a bit of it.
Nice. Yeah. Um, Mallory's here from Michigan. She says hello. She wants to know. So she says that her question is kind of a joke, but she wants to know: do you ever worry about, being taken out like Arnold Ehret was back in the day?
That's a dark joke. No. I mean, it's something that we people in my orbit, in my community, they sometimes worry about me, or they'll, it's a topic that we talk about, just kind of watching our back. And up to this point, I haven't been popular enough or famous enough to like worry too much about that. They did, they did everything except deplatform me during the, because they definitely throw warnings out there where I had during, over the past couple years, I had my website was hacked for a
Really?
particular post that I have. Yeah, there was a post that I have. I'll send it to you after. You can see what I'm talking about if you haven't
Yeah.
seen it. There's a post that's very undeniably hard hitting, but I couldn't post it on social media. So we did this underground campaign promoting it through like Telegram groups and stuff.
Hmm.
And I ended up getting, like, I don't know, it was a bunch of like 50,000 views. I mean, it was a lot of views for my website. And it was like hardcore. Man, they came in. There was a, and it's real, like, people that don't know, like, this is behind the scenes kind of stuff that happens. So a bot was sent in, hacked my website, made it so I couldn't log in. They put all kinds of uh like, pornographic links and tried to embed stuff into the code.
Wow.
Because if when that happens, if Google discovers that this content is linked or on your website, if you don't
Hmm.
get all that off of there, then your website gets blacklisted, and then you can't post anything on YouTube or on Facebook, or basically that
Yeah.
your whole website is done. And so I was like very devious. I was like, these folks are there. Someone's coming after me on that one. But no, I just live my life, do my thing. And but I am cognizant. So if in the future we do get a bit more notoriety and things get a little bit more popping, then we take the necessary precautions. But yeah, no, it's I'm aware of, like, when there was, what was that, 12, however many years ago, there was like all these naturopathic
Hmm.
uh, doctors and folks were kind of
Yep.
disappearing and dying real strange ways.
Yep.
And Dr. Sabi, however,
Right.
there's all opinions on his, it's a whole other discussion, talk about his methodologies and that kind of stuff. But that was messed up. Just that whole process and how he went out was super,
Yeah.
super questionable. And so yeah, it is a war. I mean, it's a war for physiological freedom.
Yep.
I make no mistake about it. I'm not naive about there's some folks in the community, they get a little naive about, like, it's just love and light, just eat fruit and just love and everything is
Mhm.
gonna be good. I'm like, I'm coming from a little different background in terms of just, I was never in the military, but I was trained by people that were in the militaries. I spent a long time in the Boy Scouts and stuff, and so I got a lot of, and then in football is basically like military training kind of.
Yeah.
So there's a mentality that I have that's very uh that's attuned to that dynamic of, like, so where I'm not, when they start coming after you, or me or you or whoever, it's like we're
Yeah.
not surprised, and it's not fun, but it's just kind of part of doing what we're trying to do and putting this information out there. Because a lot of the people, one of the reasons that the mucusless diet didn't get as big as it could have was because a lot of the people that did it over the years, or would read the book and would try to practice it, they purposely would just go off grid,
Mm.
not be public. They might write. So you got
Yeah.
someone like Teresa Mitchell, wrote some pretty influential documents, but then she went underground. Like she's not out here trying to do promote it or that kind of stuff. They're like, okay, here's my experience. Now you're never going to hear from me again. I'm gonna disappear. I'm gonna enjoy my life. I'm gonna feel great,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. And that's been the case for a lot of people on this path, is to just take the information, feel good, and then just go off and not really want to put themselves out there. And so that's kind of where I'm like, no, I'll do it.
Yeah.
People need to hear this information. I'll do it.
Yes. Yeah, I feel the same way. And I think when you're called to share, this type of information, I personally believe that you're protected when you follow your calling, your passion, what's within you. I think there's, whether it's God or universal, energy or whatever it is, I do think that when you follow your intuition, you follow, what you're called to do. Yeah, I think that I think you're protected in a lot of ways. Now I know, like we said, there were some people that were mysteriously taken out, but um, you know, I I don't let that influence me out of fear to not put it out
Right.
there. So yeah, it's just one of those things you got to do. If you really want to be happy, you got to follow what, like we've been saying. You got to follow what you're called to do, and if you don't, you just won't feel that same satisfaction in life. So, all right, two more questions. Are protein powders? This is from Sherry. Are protein powders like sprouted pumpkin seed or hemp protein powders mucus forming?
Uh, Potentially, it depends on what all's in them. Uh, they can, yeah, potentially be mucus forming.
Yeah, yeah. I really think any concentrated protein source would probably be, at least slightly mucus forming.
Yeah.
Um, and Christopherson says, so Bragg's vinegar with the mother is not recommended. I thought this was a healthy vinegar.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think vinegar is vinegar for the most part.
Yeah. Vinegar's vinegar, and like I said, that's not something that you want to deal with. Yeah, yeah, for too much. A little bit for transitional purposes here and there, but yeah, I wouldn't mess with it.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not into the vinegars either. All right, well that wraps up the Q&A. So again, we went much longer than anticipated, but I think it was well worth it. And Professor Spira, thank you so much for joining and sharing all your wisdom. I think you're one of the brightest lights out there, shining the truth on our current situation, whether it be diet or just other things in general that are going on in our world. So thank you for being the example that you are for people. um, and before we sign off, I just want to announce the winner of the ebook for 5-Star Salad Revolution. So, and I need to find a better way to,
Mm.
randomly pick this. I just kind of scroll through and pick one. But eventually we're going to come up with a better system. But for today, we're going to go with Angela Abs for her great question. And so we got Angela Abs. We're going to do the two thumbs up and get the fireworks going for you there. It's a new little feature in the Apple phone. So, um, so yeah, let's Angela, just send me an email at matt@myrawintuition.com and we will get you that ebook. Hope you enjoy it and hope you find it helpful. So thank you everybody for joining the show. And again, check out all of the links to follow Professor Spira and see everything that he's putting out there. It's going to be in the replay below once we get this posted. And yeah, thank you again, everybody. Professor Spira, have a great day.
Yeah, thank you for having me, everybody. And you check out the old, however many years ago we did our original interview.
Yes.
That's still on his channel. That'd be interesting for folks to see that one and then come check this one out.
Yes, I'm gonna link that in the description box below too. That was a great interview, and it's honestly I think that's one of my most popular ones. So So yeah,
Yeah,
no
yeah.
no surprise there. But yeah, thanks again. Any other last words before we log off here?
Oh man, just thanks for having me. This has been great. Yeah, good luck with the new podcast. Definitely,
Thank you.
yeah, it's just good. It's just great vibe. Just putting out this information, man. Yeah,
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Thanks again and again. We'll be here next week, same time, same place. And until then, always follow your raw intuition.